Today on the Dennis Michael Lynch podcast, we're going to have the Surgeon General from the state of Florida. We're going to ask him a lot of questions about health, DeSantis, vaccines, and it's going to be all unfiltered.
Dennis Michael Lynch gives you his word, and he will never let you down. He will always fight for America.
The only one who really puts his money where his mouth is Dennis Michael Lynch.
Hello, I'm Dennis Michael Lynch, and I thank you for joining me today. I'm going to bring in the Surgeon General of the state of Florida, Dr. Ladapo, and he is also an author. He wrote a book called Transcend Fear, and you can get it on Amazon. You can get it wherever books are sold, and it is an absolute honor to have this gentleman with me here today, especially now that we are pushing through this White House the idea of making America healthy again. So without further ado, the Surgeon General of Florida. Doctor, I got to say, I'm very happy and very honored that you're on the program with us here. I've interviewed a lot of top doctors, but I have to say, you are my favorite one. Can I tell you why? Can I tell you why?
Yeah, tell me.
I think you're going to find this interesting. So I'm married to my high school sweetheart. We got 4 kids, and our entire lives were on Long Island. And I have begged my wife, please, could we go to Florida? Could we move to Florida? And I was always told, no, 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 no. Finally, COVID hits. And then they put a double mask on my kid. And I looked to my wife, I said, could we go to Florida now? And she said, we could go to Florida now. And let me tell you, she just loves you. All right. So everything. So I got to tell you something. I mean, the difference of being somewhere in New York and then coming here and getting the leadership of, Ron DeSantis and yourself has made all the difference in the world. And unless somebody was to tell you that, you would not know the impact you've had on multiple families that I've had this conversation with. So I want to start off with a big, huge thank you for being bold and strong and taking the stand that people need to take.
Oh, thank you very much, Dennis. Well, that's really kind. That's really kind. I hear you because we're just kind of doing our stuff here, but getting feedback like that is very special, and I'm grateful that we could do it and we could help families because people deserve it and not this crazy. All these terrible, harmful policies that you only hear out of the the television and the mainstream doctors and all that.
Well, yeah, we're going to talk in a second. I had watched one of the interviews you did on CNN. Not that I watch CNN, but I watched it to prepare for this. But one other thing I just think you'd find kind of humorous is that somebody asked me, I can't remember how long ago, they said, what do you think of this No Kings I don't know what you would call them, parades, riots, whatever. I said, I would only be willing to put a king in place if it was Ron DeSantis and his team. I'd let you guys stay forever. I don't mind about that. But no, I mean, I watched what they tried to do to you on CNN. I think it was Jake Tapper when you made the announcement that there would be no more vaccine mandates. And what they tried to do is they tried to spin it as if you don't like vaccines. And what you were saying, no, I just don't like the mandate. Can you explain to us what led you to say no more mandates for any vaccines, no matter what it's for? Not just COVID, but even something as much as chickenpox.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right. That's a common strategy, right? You're talking about mandates and people having the ability, which they are God-given, the ability. I mean, you talk about basic human rights to be able to decide that you don't want to put something in your body. That's a basic human right, and they love to spin it to be about, oh, well, it's about you don't like vaccines, or oh well, but that vaccine is very effective and all that, and it's like that. Sure, fine, it has nothing to do with that. And I've never liked mandates, but we were working, me and Governor DeSantis and his wife, First Lady Casey DeSantis. We're all working on some health freedom proposals. And just as I was thinking about it and chatting with people, I just came to the conclusion that it's always something I've wanted to do. I mean, if it were up to me, if I were a king, we wouldn't have any vaccine mandates. We'd have a lot fewer mandates of everything because I'm just not fond of mandates. I think as much as possible, we should give people as much ability to, as much power for self-determination as possible. But it just, I was thinking about it, talking about it, and it just seemed right. So I called the governor the night before the press conference and we spoke and I shared it with him and he was supportive. And then we made the announcement. And, I think it was, I believe in divine timing and God's timing. And even though, I mean, if you had asked me, 4 years ago when I started this job, can we stop all vaccine mandates? Yes, no. I mean, I'd have been like, yes, like stop the mandates. But to really conceptualize it as something that could be a possibility, I believe in God's timing and divine timing.
I found it amazing watching the CNN piece. And look, I could say CNN all day long. You could put in almost anybody who wants to try to make you, this administration here in Florida, they just always out to make you guys look like you're trying to do the wrong thing for people. And which is just totally disgusting because as somebody who travels the country as much as I do and as much as I have, I cannot think of another state that has it more all together when you're looking at health, economy, just the level of freedom that we are given here in Florida. And so when you're number one, they want to take you down, right? So you're a big target for them. And one of the things that really upset me about one of the questions that Jake Tapper gave you is he questioned you by saying that all the other medical experts, all the other surgeon generals, they all disagree with you. And
Everyone's jumping over the cliff. Why aren't you jumping over the cliff? Everyone else is.
And I just sat here and I said, this was the one guy who said, don't worry about the COVID thing. Like they're trying to tell you about the COVID thing. I mean, they all made it sound like COVID. We were all going to melt like ice in the hot sun. And at the end of the day, you were right and they were wrong. And you think that he would use that as some common sense, but he doesn't. And that the shame of this and part of where I want to take this conversation is that a lot of times, even the media will spin things despite the fact that I think they hurt people and they hurt people's health. And so I just wanted to give you another opportunity because, look, we make clips and my clips always go viral everywhere. I mean, can you just punch it home one time that this wasn't a decision of politics for you? It was a decision of health.
Yeah, thanks. You said it so nicely, Dennis. Absolutely. I mean, there's one thing, the media, it is disheartening that they are so willing to cling to their political positions no matter the cost. I mean, that was on full display. You don't need a PhD or an advanced degree to know that shutdowns, school closures for children who face risks that are really comparable to all the other risks they face in terms of viruses. You don't need advanced training and advanced knowledge or special insight to know that it is going to hurt them and it's going to hurt them irreparably. And that's exactly what happened. And yet the media, they're able to just move forward with these harmful positions, backing these bad positions. And it doesn't seem to bother them. And honestly, it's really heartbreaking. I mean, I really vacillate between just disbelief and, like, how can they possibly do that? And heartbreak, because it is absolutely affecting people's lives. The harms of all the people who never needed a COVID-19 mRNA shot, who took it and now have some new debilitating health condition. That's heartbreaking stuff. I mean, it's heartbreaking, honestly. And even with this, with this vaccine mandate issue, there's something called personal responsibility. And world's not perfect, but the more personal responsibility we have, the better the better world we have. I mean, that's just a fact. You put more power in the hands of people, you're going to have a better society than if you have people really, deflecting or to government at every turn and corner for their lives and their decisions. And look, these mandates, they undermine personal responsibility. People don't take responsibility as much as they would for like, what exactly is it in this thing that you're giving me? Why are you giving me this? Like, what's the benefit? What are the risks? Is this something I need? Is this something my kid needs? You're taking away personal responsibility. And when you do that, you make people unhealthier. When people have more personal responsibility, they exercise more, they learn more about what they're putting in their bodies, they take better care of themselves. And, we're losing out on that with the mandates. And it's just and and it's normalizing this idea that like you don't have sovereignty over what goes into your body, which you absolutely do. So for so many reasons, it's like very obviously the right thing to do, even though it's something that's very different from what people believe is normal.
One of the things I think the media does, they sensationalize everything, and most of the the sensational side of things is to impose fear. And I thought that the title of your book, Transcend Fear, give me why it is that you made that the title and what the premise is there of the book as related to that.
Yeah, thanks, Dennis. Yeah, fear's such a huge and crippling force, and it's so pervasive. And, in the book, I describe my own personal journey because I myself was very much riddled and crippled by fear. And, it took me meeting my wife, Brianna, who is a very talented healer, um, and Brianna Ladapo. And then her getting me to a guy named Christopher Maher, who's a former Navy SEAL, and he's trained in methods of Chinese medicine and other methods. And he shared his tools and his teachings with me and helped me unload 98% of the fear that I was carrying, maybe 99% of the fear that I was carrying. And that helped me, that gave me the gift of freedom and the ability to see things more for what they are, to live in reality. And fear is such a crippling force and it's so pervasive. But ironically, even though scary things induce fear, ironically, you're unable to make your best decision if you're afraid.
That's right.
So it's this sort of sad, crippling cycle. And we saw it in the pandemic. I mean, there was worse than that because there was a lot of politics and a lot of greed in terms of greed for power and things like that. But you saw it certainly when people were sitting in cars alone and wearing masks or wearing two masks or thinking that they couldn't, if they walked by someone that they would like die. That was fear on display. And even though it's this important emotion, it's an emotion that it's important in the sense that it's prevalent, but it's also an emotion that really only can do harm and is not something we actually need to survive and thrive. So it's also a very human emotion, and so I say this without judging people for having fear, but rather to emphasize the importance of recognizing how important it is to not be controlled by fear.
How long did it take you to write the book? And when you were doing it, was it sort of therapeutic for you? I mean, because I'm in the midst of writing a book right now, and sometimes I've got to force myself to sit down, and other times when I do sit down, I have to force myself to get up, depending on because I just so engrossed in it. And then, I got the Apple Watch that says, "Get up, you've been sitting too long." I mean, so what was that process for you, and how long did that take you?
Yeah, it was therapeutic for me too, and I was really I ended up working with Christopher Maher, the former Navy SEAL, for 5 days, and I actually really wanted to recount my experience because as crazy as it sounds, every single day I worked with him was a miracle. And, and if we'd stopped after the first day, I would have been the happiest man in the world. And yet I had the opportunity to come back to his condo in Marina Del Rey in Los Angeles and get freer and freer of more and more, crippling emotions, more and more emotions that were, that weren't inherent to my nature, but were definitely dimming my light as a human being. And so I was really happy to be able to recount that experience. And now it's in print forever. And I worked on it for months. I don't remember how many months. I don't know. Maybe it was like 4 or 5 months, something like that. But that's probably about as long as it took.
Yeah. So sticking on fear for a second, and using that, so this way maybe you could soothe parents a little bit. You go back to that CNN interview, and the one clip that they pulled from that and played over and over and over again and sort of went viral in its areas online was the part of where he challenged you that there was an uptick in hepatitis A, whooping cough, and chickenpox after you pulled back the mandate, trying to make it sound as if your decisions made people sick. And I said, he never gave you an opportunity to explain that. So my first question and my second question, you could answer it in one. Number one, is it not true that hepatitis A, whooping cough, and chickenpox do not come in sort of like cycles? Sometimes it's high and then sometimes it's low and it comes back and forth. Or is it one of these things that he's right? You by not looking into enough data about what would happen if you pulled back the mandate, that you caused this uptick in this people getting sick for no reason.
Yeah, it's their usual glass and, the smoke and mirror stuff that the media does. There are cycles of these viruses, and, and we see that in the epidemiology. We do see the cycles. I mean, the other thing to keep in mind is that people have a right to make whatever decisions they want. I mean, you look at some of these things like whooping cough. So whooping cough is actually, of the vaccines, it's actually not an effective vaccine for preventing transmission. So what happens really with whooping cough is that when people do get the vaccine, they they may be exposed to whooping cough. They contract it generally just as well as people who don't have the vaccine, but they don't have symptoms. So that's great that they don't have symptoms, but they're still contagious. So these, just depending on the vaccine, the implications are different. And with chickenpox, um, frankly, I had chickenpox when I was a kid. I suspect you did too.
Yep.
In my opinion, that's a vaccine that probably should not have been developed. That should have remained a childhood illness. There are now going to be some epidemiologic complications related to the fact that we do have a vaccine in it, because now parents of kids aren't getting re-exposed and boosted from the chickenpox that their kid would normally get. Um, but there is a vaccine, and people are able to take it if they want. So I'm not concerned about um, I'm not concerned about fluctuations, because you're going to see that. What I'm really more concerned about is the inability of people to make informed decisions. And look, if people want to take the chickenpox vaccine, it is effective at preventing chickenpox. They should take it. And if they don't want to take it because they're concerned about, say they're concerned about, for example, I believe it's one of the vaccines that's developed with a cell line that comes from an aborted fetus. Some people don't want to participate in that, for all the money in the world, they don't want to participate in that because, their soul is priceless, and they're concerned that participating in that is, an affront to their relationship to God. Mm-hmm. So, that's their right. As long as they can make informed decisions. So all that stuff from Tapper was, it was nonsense. I mean, these things go up and down, and people have a right to make decisions. And by the way, there'd be a lot less distrust if they weren't lied to morning, afternoon, and night during the pandemic by people like, these anchors on CNN and, and a lot of our federal leadership, and, misstatements by Dr. Fauci, for example.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's one of the that's where I want to take this conversation now. I mean, just to stick on those three with the hepatitis that he brought up, have you seen? Has there been any massive tragedies that you know of because of the mandate removed from taking a vaccine here in Florida?
No, there haven't been. And we've in the Department of Health, there are a few that we control mandates for. And so we've already started the process of lifting those mandates. And then there are other mandates that are in Florida law. So we've been looking into how we can work with the lawmakers to remove those. But no, no, I mean, there are other countries that don't have vaccine mandates. And, you look at Sweden, you look at Norway, you look at the United Kingdom, their vaccination, Iceland, I think is another one, most parts of Canada, their vaccination uptake is pretty comparable to other countries. So, Jake and other people use this strategy of fear to basically control people's behavior and or to influence people's behavior. And it's another disheartening thing, when people stoop to that level to try and achieve an outcome. My belief is that, hey, let me give you information and look, you are an individual and you get to make the decision and you can ask me more questions, and you can ask other people questions and then you get to make your decision. I don't need you to make a decision that, the decision that I want. I need you to make the decision that feels right for you. And, I wish we had more of that in public health.
Well, one of the other things that, in addition to the fear mongering, what he did in that interview with you, and that you watched this a million times with Fauci and others, is they tried to guilt you. And they guilted you in the sense that, hey, I think he was telling the story about how he has a friend who has a child with a weak immune system, and that by not making other children take the vaccine, you were then putting his son in danger. And I remember they used that same tactic with COVID,
Yeah.
telling you that, if you didn't take the vaccine, you were going to cause somebody else to get sick and die. And I mean, listen, there were a lot of people. I never took the vaccine because I never believed in it. I thought it fast forwarded itself way too fast. This doesn't sound right. I'm being forced upon me. I'll take my time. And you know what, doctor? Thank God today I didn't take it, because every time I get an ache and pain, I'd say, oh my God, it's the vaccine. It's going to get me. And so the guilt factor, I mean, that's why I asked you if you knew about any severe cases of one of these things, because he made it sound as if you were putting people's lives in danger because you weren't forcing other people to do something. And I just think it was a complete irresponsibility on his end. With that said, let me ask you this. What is your feeling about vaccinations and ties to autism?
Yeah, so interesting. So it's something that I'm still learning more about. So it gets sciency, if you will. Like I think all of us pretty much saw that press conference that President Trump had about acetaminophen, and Dr. Jay Bhattacharya was there, Dr. Marty Kulldorff was there, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Secretary Kennedy was there. And there's what they talked about included a discussion about something called leucovorin. And leucovorin is this, Dr. Makari talked about it, and it's this activated form of folic acid. And there have been some studies that show kids with autism, folate is critical for neural function, for cellular function, critical. And there have been some studies where kids with autism have received leucovorin and had like super rapid improvement in their symptoms, which is profound and which appears to be true. And so why that is potentially relevant to autism and vaccines, and but not just vaccines, just kind of exposures in general, is that there do appear to be people who have more difficulty processing toxins. And those toxins may be aluminum, those toxins may be mercury, which, by the way, is still in some vaccines. People like to say that it's not, but there are still some that have it. And these toxins can be all sorts of things. So, am I confident that for some subpopulation of people, exposure to toxic substances, wherever they might come from, whether it's a vaccine or a food or something, may not trigger, won't trigger some type of cellular injury that leads to neurodevelopmental delay? No, I'm not confident about that. And so I think even though you have so much of the medical intelligentsia, if you will, um, saying that case closed, close all the books. I don't think that's the right approach. Something else. You may have heard of this study that Del Bigtree did a movie on called the Inconvenient. What is it? The Inconvenient Truth or the Inconvenient Study? And this was a study of families, kids in the Henry Ford health system up in Michigan. And, the study's not perfect, but they found some very strong relationships between vaccine exposure and some neurodevelopmental outcomes. And, the study is imperfect. There's some issues, but I think that they're probably true. I think that there is something there. So I think it's something that we need to approach with a much more open mind instead of, these people that are like, no, 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 don't study it. The question's been answered. Can't ask the question anymore. They're not, their priority is not the health of people. Their priority is vaccine confidence and maintaining vaccine confidence. And boys, boy, give me a break. We're in this for the people. Like, there's no point if, I'm not doing my job for vaccine confidence. I'm doing my job for the health of Floridians, for the health of everyone. So I think we need to really approach the question with a much more open mind.
When you talk about the vaccines and autism, right away, the health secretary comes to mind. And there was a big, huge movement during the campaign of Trump about make America healthy again. And there are a couple of things that have happened along the way that have me concerned because I do not like if my wife, if I have a headache, the first thing she's going to say is take 2 Advil. And I said, no, I don't want to take any of that. I just don't like taking anything from pharmaceutical companies because I think there's a lot of toxins in them. And I'm not one of these, completely 110% holistic health guys, but I understand that if I get into a car accident, God forbid, and my arm is falling off, take me to the hospital, shoot me up with some stuff and fix it. But I believe that the human body was designed in such a way to heal itself. And I always say we didn't create Pfizer on day 8, right? That God didn't do that. So the way that I actually said, I'd love to speak to the Surgeon General was I was talking to the girl who we both know who booked you. I was talking to her about fasting. And she said, oh, he fasts. So I was hoping that we could move this a little bit into the Make America Healthy again, because, I see all these people taking, what is that called, Ozempic? And it scares the hell out of me that we're going to have a lot of people who are trying to lose weight. And although they may be curing one problem in terms of, oh, well, I'm not going to have a heart attack. I said, well, wait a second. You just injected yourself with this stuff. What is your feeling about those weight loss drugs? And then secondly, tell us if you do fast and how often you fast and why.
Yeah. So my feelings about the drugs are evolving. So it's very interesting, Dennis, because they work. Like, there's no question about it. And not only do they work, they also make things better on average for people. And what I mean by that is, weight loss drugs are not new. There have been other stimulants, for example, that are FDA approved for weight loss. There have been other drugs for weight loss, but they always come with a big catch. right? They mess up your cholesterol. I think some of them even increase your risk of stroke, so there have always been problems with these drugs, and they do have problems. Like sometimes people can have severe pancreatitis. It's definitely killed people, in fact, in some of these cases. So there are still side effects, but overall, on average, when you take people with obesity or morbid obesity and you treat them with these drugs, on average, you make their lives better. They live longer, they live a higher quality, people live a higher quality of life. So they work. So this is a really we've never had anything like this before for a problem as chronic as obesity. We just never had anything like this before. With that said, I tend to, do I prefer that people actually, look at what they're eating, maybe try the carnivore diet, maybe try intermittent fasting, really examine what they're putting in their mouths and make that, lose weight that way. Yeah, definitely I prefer it. At the same time, I get it. I've also seen people, struggle with trying to lose weight. And, I'm sympathetic to it. So, I mean, overall, I don't recommend, I mean, very rarely would I recommend them to a patient. Um, but I also don't discourage people from using them. That said, people should know that when they stop using them, the weight usually comes back. And there are some things. So one thing I do is I tell people, what we know in the scientific literature so far about preventing that weight regain. And basically that's like, it's exercise seems to be the big thing. Like if you can be active while you're on it, when you get off it, you try to stay active, like you hold your weight better. So, you know, the other thing too that's important is like, why are so many people obese? Like, let's keep focused on that and not just, you know, get another drug, get more people on another drug. Now, I do fast. Yeah. So I started it. So I mentioned Christopher Maher earlier, that former Navy SEAL. And basically, just about every year I work with him. I'll take some days, take a week and work with him. And he just teaches me new, it's a lot of physical stuff. And the idea uh, is that there are different sort of physical kind of exercises, if you will, that you can do, very specific ones that help remove stress and tension from your body. And so I learned new things, and so the last time I was working with him, or actually the penultimate time I was working with him, um, uh, I had to fast. And I thought I was going to die. Like I hadn't eaten for like 24 hours. I was like, oh my God, I thought I was going to die. And then we ate that night, and I was like, oh, like I had a steak, and then we had to do it again, and then we ate that night, and then by the third day, I was like, I kind of like this, and so it's been a year now, and basically, I don't eat until dinner, and sometimes like a early dinner, maybe like 4 or 5 p.m. Sometimes a late dinner, 6 or 7 p.m. But that's what I've been doing. And honestly, I really love it. I mean, I have a lot of clarity during the day. Um, it feels good.
So you're fasting by means of loading up on one meal, dinner,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
then you're letting all those hours go. So theoretically, it's 23 hours off, 1 hour on, 23 hours off, 1 hour on, if it's taking you an hour to eat that steak. So that's interesting. But other people will do it to where they're intermittent fasting, where they're waiting later in the day, or even going multiple days. But in your case, I mean, you're actually putting your body into autophagy every single day, because I think what they say is that after 17 hours, the body goes into autophagy, which basically is the good cells eating up and destroying the bad cells, if I don't have it mistakenly. So you're seeing the results on clarity. And what about in terms of, are you sleeping better? Or do you feel just generally more healthy?
I do. I know it. I mean, honestly, like I, I never, I mean, I thought I was going to die that first day.
Yes, yes. Yeah,
I was
yeah.
gonna die. I thought I was gonna die, man. Um, but honestly, I started liking it, and honestly, I definitely is clarity. There's just, and I love food. I love food. However, there's just something about when you fast, and I'm not even doing that hardcore. I mean, there are got people that, they'll go 2, 3 days without
Yeah.
eating, and I'm not interested. I mean, I love the benefits, but I'm okay with not getting those benefits. But but it honestly, it feels really good. Like definitely feel clearer during the day, and because I don't know, there's just something about like you eat, the blood's pumping to your gut, your blood glucose is going up and down. There's just something about it that, in my opinion, reduces my productivity during the day. So I do feel good. I do feel healthier. I don't understand why that is, but like, I mean, honestly, I feel great, and I'm grateful to God to letting me feel great. And the fasting definitely is a big part of that.
Reason why.
Yeah.
With that said, we could hit this quick. I have a couple of little things I want to get to before you go. But one of the other things that people complain a lot about is they're concerned about what's actually being pumped into our food. And I find that to be one of the big problems we have is, people, you read these labels and it says diet this or low fat that. But then if you really were to ever look at the label, I mean, they're pumping in some pretty dangerous stuff or some pretty ugly things that if people knew what they were eating, they may otherwise put it down.
Yeah.
Do you find it that the people who tend to go with more, let's say, fully grass-fed steaks, wild caught fish, do you see any kind of nexus to better health when you're choosing that sort of stuff? Or is it just at the end of the day, that's just another scare tactic to try to sell more expensive food? Because what you'll hear from people who are obese, they'll say it's almost impossible for me to lose weight because I can't afford that good, wholesome food. It's so much more. It's easier for me to pay for the dollar meal up at McDonald's.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say it's a half truth. The
Okay.
part that's true is that it is, honestly, it's an effing tragedy how expensive it is to eat well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like, in our family, my wife orders the food, like gets the groceries and all that, and we do like Instacart and Costco and Sprouts. And it's crazy how expensive it is to eat well. Um, but it's also expensive not to eat well. Because, what you don't pay for with the food, you will pay. You will definitely pay, whether it's your energy, whether it's a chronic health condition that comes up, whether it's pain that you develop in parts of your body, whether it's a shorter lifespan, you will pay. So I think it's worth the expense. The other thing too is that, there are some healthy foods that, I mean, they may not be popular, but they're not as expensive. So, for example, different types of nuts are actually very healthy. I mean, that's been shown in studies, randomized clinical trials, even. I think one that was published in Lancet of a trial of basically peanuts in India, I think. And so, it's not as expensive as the filet mignon. It's not quite as cheap as the McDonald's, but there are ways to supplement those calories from things that are not so terrible for you, or at least they're better for you than like whatever you get at McDonald's, and but not a huge budget busters. So, I mean, I do think that people do have more options. I don't think people realize how expensive it is to not eat well.
I think that is a brilliant, brilliant answer. And so I want to go back to something that you said before. You said a name, and that's Anthony Fauci. And again, I'm going to give you my opinion on this. I think that what that man did is criminal on many different levels. But the part that bothers me the most, doctor, is the impact that it's had on our children. And if there's one thing that I can tell you that I've seen a difference in, I've been in the news business for 20 years, from the days I was on Fox News to hosting Newsmax, making documentaries, whatever it was. I've seen a lot of changes in the country, but the biggest change that I have seen handedly is our children today. When I was a kid, and I think I got you in age. When I was a kid, you couldn't go down the street without seeing kids playing basketball, football, kickball, you name it. I mean, I would make a bet with you, no joke, that tomorrow if you came to my house and we drove around, I would literally bet $1 million that we would not see one kid outside with a ball. And I think I'd win the bet. And even if we did see one, it's still criminal to that end. So when you take a group of youngsters and you're taking a ball out of their hand and you're putting a digital device in their hand, that's problem number one. But that's how the world is evolving, and I don't know how to stop that, to be quite honest. But then when you subject those children to staying in the house and hunkering down and being 24/7 on that device, because that's the way you're going to make them learn, because you're not going to let them go to school, I still believe to this day that our children are paying a price that they haven't fully recovered yet from what it is that happened to them during COVID. And I'd like to hear what you have to say on that one.
I agree completely. It's a honestly, of all the things, perhaps that's the most criminal aspect of it, the injury that was done to children. Yeah, I completely agree. Especially with these digital devices. We've got a 12-year-old, an 8-year-old, pardon me, a 12-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 7-year-old at home. And my wife is like, she's just a very intuitive mom. She knows what's good for them. She knows what's not. And she goes, crazy about devices and controlling it and making sure they can't sneak them. Um, we limit it in our family. It's so important. Those things are so freaking addictive,
Yeah.
and they rot the brain. The kids should be outside playing. It is really sad to not see that. And I know what you mean. And these devices are definitely part of that trend. People like busy posting or like, scrolling through like social media and not outside, like, playing pickup basketball. And I completely 1000% agree with you.
I mean, if I was sitting down with the governor, I would say to the governor, I love the whole thing you're doing here with the property tax. I mean, my property tax is $33,000 a year. I can think of so many better places to spend it.
Ouch.
Okay. So many. I mean, he passes that, man. I'm telling you, I'm thinking about I might put a statue of him in my house if he does that. But if I were to sit with him and I was to say, Governor, there's one thing I'd love to see you do before you leave is, create some sort of initiative with the Surgeon General where we can just try to push these kids outdoors again, to have them drop the phones and have them do the devices. I know that's sort of like asking somebody to make every country give up their nuclear weapons. But, I concern myself big time with the thoughts of what our country's going to look like if the only thing our kids are proficient in is, gaming and social media.
Yeah. I'm so with you, Dennis. I mean, it is such a huge problem. It's also a gateway for all this artificial intelligence stuff because normalizing these relationships with these devices, it just opens the door that much wider for people to shove, the type of AI technology that whose purpose is just to replace human beings. And I worry personally that the younger generations are going to be way more susceptible to letting the wolf inside the house. Um, So I'm, and it's not like anti-technology, but I am definitely anti-technology that aims to diminish human beings. And whether intentionally or unintentionally, that is definitely the path of of artificial intelligence use right now.
People look at AI. It was the last topic I had here for you. People look at AI, and there's parts of them that think that this is going to be revolutionary in the sense that finally we will eradicate diseases that we've never been able to get our heads around. Cancer, for one. They talk about how it's going to be so efficient in terms of cutting time and money and effort from things that human beings make mistakes on. Now the machines won't make the mistakes. From a medical health perspective, do you find AI is going to be a plus or a minus? And do you feel that there will be a day when doctors will not be as needed as they are, because when you go into the OR, you will have a robot that will be doing your surgery?
Yeah, yeah. I think the whole robot wet dream that these guys in Silicon Valley are having, I don't think that's going to materialize. Um, I think
Really?
that I don't think so. I think that I think that you know ultimately, like, there is something robots aren't alive, right? And there's a role for a human being uh, to be a clinician for a patient that a robot will never be able to fill, because a robot doesn't have feelings. And this is part of why it's important that we don't lose the plot of humanity, right? These people who are these technocrats that worship technology, they, it doesn't, look at the self-driving cars, for example. Like, do I think that if cars drove us everywhere, with technology, we would have fewer accidents? Yeah, possibly, and I think there's data that shows that. Do I think that the ability of a human being to be able to drive a vehicle and feel that autonomy and freedom of driving where he or she wants is worth preserving and more important than someone's utopian search for like zero car accidents? Yeah, because humans come first. So AI right now, I think we're still on the curve where we're able to use it in a way that actually creates a net good for patients in healthcare. But it's very easy to hit the inflection point and start heading south, where we absolutely will be diminishing our race as a human race by reliance and trust in AI. That's for sure. And I mean, my prayer and hope, and certainly my fight, is that we're able to have enough agency to realize when to say no, like where to draw the line. Because the guys in Silicon Valley, they don't have that. A lot
No,
of people don't even believe in God. They
no.
do not have that, right? And God exists, and God is why we're here.
Oh, you
So
bet.
that's the
Yeah.
team that,
I mean, I'll say this to you, doctor, about this part here is that, the whole thing of AI is supposed to be that it's going to eradicate human error. And 25% of the time, these AIs get it wrong anyway,
yeah,
And so if I were to be in a situation, life and death or otherwise, and I had the choice between a AI robot and a human being, let's say you being my doctor, I'm going to go with the human being. If for
yeah,
no other reason that if a mistake is made, I'd rather know that it was a mistake made by a human being who cares about me versus a robot that sees me as a digit. And
yeah.
so, yeah, I think that if we strip humanity from human life, we're in trouble. That said, two last questions for you. One is a little close to my heart. I'm big into CBD, and this new ban on hemp that was in the CR that they just wanted to doing to keep the government open. I don't understand why hemp would be in there. How familiar are you with non addictive, straight out good CBD that doesn't get people stoned and it doesn't get them all whacked out of their brain? Because the scare here is that and I don't know how much you know about this or not, so I'll give it to you as if you don't. The way that they're making it is the packaging now is in such a way to where no CBD company is going to want to be in the business, because you would have to package it so small, nobody's going to buy it. It's like me telling you, you can't have your 8-ounce cup of caffeine anymore. I'm going to give it to you in a thimble. That's as much as you could have because I don't want to give you too much caffeine. And then so what happens is the stuff that doesn't have any THC in it, even the stuff that's underneath the legal limit, the farmers aren't going to want to make the CBD. They're not going to want to grow hemp anymore. And so the whole business is going to go out. And so people who use it, and they use it in the millions, I use it, there is a fear that now this is a push by the big drug companies that they don't want CBD because it's natural, and they're going to take that away. And I know a lot of older people, especially here in Florida, are up in arms about this. Is the governor or you addressing any of this, or is this out of your bailiwick at this point?
It's not an issue I know a lot about.
Okay.
I read that about the continuing resolution or whatever, the funding bill.
Yep.
And I I'm not big on substances, but I am very supportive of people using pretty much whatever they need to use for their health. If it, pain, depression,
Sleep.
I,
I mean, sleep is huge. I use it for sleep. It's huge.
I'm very
Yep.
supportive of that. Like people suffer so much. Um, so that's interesting because I was reading that about that, CR, and basically, what I was reading is that it would effectively end the industry.
It's over.
And to me, that does, I mean, that seems unwise. And hopefully it's something that gets corrected because it's a big industry, and I mean, you're sharing that, a lot of people depend on it.
I'm doctor. I can tell you right now, I have never ever. I'm 56 years old. I have never ever in my life even tried a drug. I haven't had a toke of pot. Nothing. Drink. I'll drink you under the table if we have to. But I mean, even that I don't do a lot of. And so, when I hear that they're taking this away, because, and the big reason they used was that children are getting sick and they're in the hospital. I said, "What? You got to be kidding me. We've got so many drugs coming through the border. We got so many drugs in every single town and city, and you're going to crack down on CBD? I don't know of one child who has died from CBD." So if you don't know about it, I'm not going to stick you on the spot with it. But I just wanted to see whether or not it was something that impacted you. Last question here, and I'll let you get back to your family. So let's assume for the moment that Casey DeSantis does not run, and that the DeSantis time in office is coming to an end. And let's just assume that the same is with you, that, you leave with them. Theoretically, you've got about one more year left. If there was one thing on your plate that you haven't been able to address yet, one thing that you want to get done in the state of Florida before it is that you leave, where you think that it will make Florida even more healthy than it already is, what would it be?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a good question. I think our push to end vaccine mandates would be the thing that I would choose to end them all, because I think it would really serve as we ended that addition of fluoride to water, which was absolutely the correct thing to do medically, and correct thing to do sort of philosophically and in terms of personal responsibility. We've done a lot of other things too, but I think that the vaccine mandates to upend that, belief that, somehow people came to believe was normal, that the government is supposed to be able to dictate to you what you put in your body, just to be able to just have a like a state that says the opposite of that. I think that would be it, because that would have a lot of value for the mission of freedom, which is, that's how we survive. Like that's how this country was created, and that's how we'll survive this AI madness that's happening, and whatever the next challenge is. And that's what it took to get us out of COVID. Also, freedom-loving Americans, freedom-loving Floridians. Otherwise, can you imagine what the world would look like? So I think that's what I would pick.
I think it's a good answer. So I'm going to close off by asking you to tell people where they can follow you on social media. But before I do that, I'm going to take the last word here. So I'm very good at predicting things, sir. Very good. Very, very good. I rarely get them wrong when it comes to politics. So here's where I think is going to happen. I think that Ron DeSantis will run in 2028. I think he's going to win this time. And I think that you are going to be the future Surgeon General of the United States of America. I just think that's what's going to happen. So from my lips to God's ears. So, assuming that's what you want for yourself, I don't know. But with that said, I want to say you're a gentleman. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope people go out and get your book. We're showing it up here on the screen, Transcend Fear. And where can people follow you on social media? Because I think they should follow you.
Thanks, Dennis. Well, Twitter, Florida Surgeon General is where I'm at. And yeah, man, thanks. And yeah, let's hope that Governor DeSantis wins. He's a terrific leader.
Yeah, he certainly is. Thank you so much, sir, for your time.
All right, thanks, Dennis.
Well, that's it for us. I think that you should have gotten a lot out of that. The number one thing I got out of it is that, if you believe in people having the right to choose what they put in their body and what they don't, this is a guy that you want to support, because at the end of the day, I don't want somebody telling me I have to put something into my body. That's where it was going with COVID. And I was like, no, I ain't doing that. It's one of the other reasons why I left New York. I said, how long until it is that they, I'm not going to be able to go outside my house if I'm not vaccinated. And so if there's one thing I could tell you about Florida, unlike any state, freedom rings here, whether it's the governor or the Surgeon General. That's it for us. Until the next time, God willing, may he bless you, your family, the United States, and the Surgeon General. Talk to you soon.
Get the Dennis Michael Lynch podcast every day by subscribing on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and download the DMail News app from the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store for breaking news, merchandise, films, exclusive content, and teamed email.